She told the cops he had left hours ago. A lie for a stranger who looked too tired to be dangerous. 1 cup of coffee at 200 a.m. One choice. By morning, 500 black SUVs surrounded her small town diner, and she realized she hadn't saved just anyone but the Mafia boss. The clock above the cash register read 2:17 a.m. when Clara Evans noticed the blood. She'd been wiping down the same counter for the 3rd time. Anything to keep her hands busy during the graveyard shift at the diner. Highway 40. One was dead quiet this time of night. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional semi-truck roaring past toward Chicago. That's when the man in the suit walked in. Clara looked up from the counter, her tired eyes taking him in. Mid-30s, maybe. Expensive dark suit, the kind you didn't see much in rural Illinois. His black hair was perfectly styled, but his face told a different story. Jaw tight, eyes moving constantly to the windows, the door then back to her. "We're open," Clara said, even though the man was already halfway to the counter. "Coffee black." His voice was steady, but his hands weren't. They trembled slightly as he reached for his wallet. That's when Clara saw it. A dark stain on his right cuff. Fresh blood. She should have been scared. Any sane person would have been. But Clara Evans stopped being scared of much after watching her mother die slowly in a hospital bed. Drowning in medical bills that now had Clara's name on them. $47,000 worth of debt could numb you to a lot of things. "You okay?" she asked, pouring the coffee. The man's eyes snapped to hers. Dark brown, almost black. For a second, she thought he might bolt. Instead, he let out a breath. "Just a bad night." Clara slid the coffee across the counter. "Yeah, I know those." He wrapped both hands around the mug like he was trying to steal its warmth. Clara noticed he kept glancing at the window, at the darkness beyond the neon sign that read, "Clara's Diner. Open all night." "You waiting for someone?" she asked. "No." He took a sip, hoping no one's waiting for me. Before Clara could figure out what that meant, headlights flooded the parking lot. Not one car. 3 big black SUVs with government plates, the kind that didn't need to announce what they were. They moved fast, blocking both exits of the small lot. The man's coffee mug stopped halfway to his mouth. "Back door," he whispered. Clara's heart kicked into high gear. Kitchen, through the diner's front door, exploded open for men stormed in, and Clara's brain barely had time to register the FBI jackets before the lead agent was at the counter. Asian guy, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that scanned the diner in 2 seconds flat. "FBI, we're looking for a man, dark suit, about 6'2", came through here in the last 10 minutes. The agent's badge, Red Park. Where is he?" Clara's eyes flicked to the kitchen door. It was still swinging slightly. She could tell the truth. Should tell the truth. These were federal agents. For God's sake, the man had blood on his sleeve. He was obviously running from something. But then Clara remembered something. 3 months ago, her mother's hospital room. The insurance investigator with his clipboard and his rehearsed sympathy. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Evans, but this procedure isn't covered. You'll have to pay out of pocket, or well, we can discuss other options." Other options meant going home to die. The investigator had been polite professional doing his job. Clara hated him more than anyone she'd ever met. She looked at Agent Park and his 3 backup agents spreading through her diner hands on their weapons, treating her little restaurant like a crime scene. And she made a choice. "No one's been here." Clara said clearly. Just me for the last 2 hours. Graveyard shift. It's always dead this time of night. Agent Park's eyes narrowed. He studied her face, really studied it, like he was taking a photograph with his mind. You sure about that, Miss Evans? Clara Evans? She met his stare without blinking. And yeah, I'm sure. Kind of hard to miss someone in a place this small. One of the other agents was already moving through the diner, checking the bathroom, peering into booze. Another pushed into the kitchen. Clara's pulse hammered in her ears. If they found him, she was going to jail. Obstruction of justice. Lying to federal officers. All for a stranger with blood on his cuff. What the hell was she thinking? The agent emerged from the kitchen, shaking his head. Clear. Agent Park didn't move. He kept his eyes locked on Clara, and she had the sudden, terrifying certainty that he knew. He knew she was lying, but he couldn't prove it. Clara Evans, he said, slowly, pulling out a phone. His fingers moved across the screen. You live at 247 Oak Street, apartment 2B. Your mother, Linda Evans, passed away 4 months ago at Mercy General. Outstanding medical debt currently stands at 47,200 $200. Clara's blood turned to ice. I know everything about you. Park continued, his voice quiet. Dangerous. So if you're lying to me right now, I will find out. And when I do that, debt will be the least of your problems. He held her gaze for 5 more seconds. Then he turned and walked out. The other agents followed. The SUV's engines roared to life, and within 30 seconds they were gone. Red tail lights disappearing down Highway 41. Clara's legs almost gave out. She gripped the counter, her whole body shaking. Jesus Christ, she whispered. What did I just do? You saved my life. Clara spun around. The man in the suit stood in the kitchen doorway. He'd been there the whole time, pressed against the wall behind the industrial freezer, probably where the agents couldn't see him from their quick sweep. He walked slowly toward the counter, and Clara saw him clearly now in the diner's fluorescent lights. Handsome in a dangerous way, the kind of face you'd see in a courtroom or on the news. Why? He asked simply. Why did you lie for me? Clara's mouth was dry. I don't know. You looked, she struggled for the word, human tired, like you were running from something bigger than you. The man stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his wallet and placed $500. Bills on the counter. The coffee was $12, Clara said automatically. I know he pushed the money toward her. You just lied to federal agents for a stranger. That's not something people do without consequences. He turned to leave, and Clara noticed he moved stiffly like something hurt. Wait, she called out. At least tell me your name, so I know who I'm going to jail for. He paused at the door, one hand on the frame. A small smile crossed his face, proud and grateful at the same time. Matteo, he said. Matt Rossi. Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness beyond the neon sign. Clara stood alone in her empty diner, $500 on the counter, and the certain knowledge that her life had just changed forever. She didn't know how right she was. Outside in the shadows across the highway, a black sedan sat with its lights off. Inside, Agent Park lowered his binoculars and made a call. Yeah, it's me. We didn't get Rossi, but we got something better. He watched Clara through the diner window as she sank onto a stool, head in her hands. We got leverage. He hung up and started typing on his tablet, opening a new file. Subject, Clara Evans status, person of interest relationship to Matteo Rossi. Unknown. Recommended action surveillance and recruitment. Park smiled in the darkness. See you soon, Miss Evans. Clara didn't sleep. She sat on her apartment couch until sunrise, staring at the $500 spread across her coffee table. The money felt dangerous, like evidence. At 6 a.m., she finally dragged herself back to the diner for the morning shift. Her manager, old Pete, was already there, starting the coffee. "You look like hell," he said. "Rough night." That's when she saw it. On the counter, right where Matteo had been sitting, was a gold ring. Clara picked it up slowly. Heavy, expensive, the kind of gold that wasn't plated. A serpent was carved into it, eating its own tail. Eyes made of tiny red stones. He'd forgotten it. She should have thrown it away. Should have mailed it to the FBI. Should have done anything except what she actually did. Clara slipped the ring into her apron pocket. The diner filled up with the usual morning crowd. Truckers, construction workers, a few farmers heading to the grain elevator. Normal people living normal lives. Clara poured coffee and took orders and pretended everything was fine. Then at 9:47 a.m., the world stopped. Mrs. Chun, sitting in booth 3, dropped her fork. What in the name of Clara looked up through the diner's front windows. She saw them coming. Black SUVs. Dozens of them. No, hundreds of them. They poured into the parking lot like a flood, filling every space, then spilling onto the shoulder of Highway 41, blocking both lanes. More kept coming. "Oh my God," Pete whispered. The construction workers stood up from their stools. One of them pulled out his phone and started filming. Clara's heart stopped. She knew exactly what this was. The SUVs weren't just in the parking lot anymore. They lined the highway in both directions as far as she could see. The entire road was blocked. Men in dark suits emerged from the vehicles, not rushing, not threatening, just standing waiting. "Clara." Pete's voice shook. "What did you do?" Before she could answer, people started gathering outside. Townspeople poured out of the hardware store, the gas station, the post office. Within minutes, there were 50 people in the street. Then 100. Phones everywhere recording. A news van pulled up, then another. A helicopter appeared overhead. Clara's hands trembled as she gripped the counter. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. Then the crowd parted. A man walked through the sea of people like Moses through the Red Sea. Matteo Rossi wearing a different suit, charcoal grey, perfectly tailored. He looked completely calm, like he walked through crowds of hundreds every day. Maybe he did. The diner door opened. Every head inside turned. Matteo walked straight to the counter, and Clara saw something different in his face. Now last night he looked tired, hunted human. Now he looked like exactly what he was. Powerful. "You forgot something," Clara heard herself say. Her voice sounded very far away. She pulled the serpent ring from her apron with shaking fingers. Mate took it slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. "You kept it. I was going to mail it back to you. I didn't know where to send it." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Clara, you didn't just protect a man last night. You protected my name." He slipped the ring back onto his finger. "That has consequences." I didn't mean I know his voice was gentle, but it carried through the silent diner. But intent doesn't matter. Not in my world. He turned to face the windows, the cameras, the phones, the hundreds of people watching. Then Matteo Rossi did something Clara would never forget. He raised his voice so everyone could hear. This place is under my protection. This woman is under my protection. His eyes swept across the crowd outside. Anyone who touches this diner touches her, touches anything that's hers, they touch me. Spread the word. The silence was absolute. Then Matteo turned back to Clara, his voice dropping to just between them. I'm sorry. I never meant to drag you into this. But now that you're in it, I can't pull you back out. The best I can do is make sure you're safe. Safe. Clara's voice cracked. You just brought 500 SUVs to my diner. How is this safe? Because now everyone knows hurting you means war with me. The FBI my enemies, everyone. He paused. It's not the life you wanted, but it's the life you have now. He walked to the door, then stopped. Keep that ring. You might need it someday. Then he was gone, climbing into the lead SUV. Like a choreographed dance, all the vehicles started their engines simultaneously. The convoy pulled away, and within 5 minutes Highway 41 was empty again. But the damage was done. Pete grabbed Clara's arm. You need to tell me what the hell is going on. Before she could answer, her phone rang. The landlord. Miss Evans. I'm very sorry, but I need you out of the apartment by the end of the week. What? Why? I can't have that kind of attention on my property. I'm sorry. It's not personal. He hung up. Clara stared at her phone in disbelief. Then it rang again. Her best friend, Jenna. Are you insane? Jenna's voice was pure panic. You're on the news. They're calling you the Mafia's waitress. Clara, you need to leave town right now. Before what? Clara snapped. I can't leave. I have 47,000 in debt. I have nowhere to go. Then you're dead. You know that, right? You're caught between the FBI and the mob. Nobody survives that. The line went dead. Clara looked around her diner. The customers were all staring at her. Some scared, some fascinated, none of them friendly. One by one, they got up and left. Nobody paid. By noon, the diner was empty except for Pete. I'm sorry, Clara, he said quietly. But I can't keep you on staff, not with all this heat. Pete, please. I got grandkids, I can't risk it. He walked out, leaving Clara alone. She sank onto a stool, the serpent ring burning a hole in her pocket. Last night she had a job, an apartment, and a friend. Now she had nothing. Nothing except the protection of a man who just painted a target on her back. Outside across the highway, a sheriff's car sat idle. Sheriff Morrison watched the diner through his windshield, then slowly drove away. He didn't stop to check on her. Nobody was coming to help. Clara Evans was completely, utterly alone. Clara made it through 2 more days. 2 days of sleeping in her car behind the diner because the landlord changed the locks early. 2 days of eating stale donuts and cold coffee because she couldn't afford anything else. 2 days of watching the townspeople cross the street when they saw her coming. On the 3rd night, they came for her. Clara was parked in the Walmart lot on the edge of town trying to sleep in her Honda's back seat when flashlights blazed through her windows. Clara Evans opened the door. She sat up, heart hammering. Through the window she saw Agent Park and 3 other FBI agents surrounding her car. Open it now or we open it for you. Clara's hands shook as she unlocked the door. Park pulled it open. Get out. What's this about? You're coming with us. They didn't handcuff her, but they might as well have. Two agents flanked her as they walked her to a black SUV. Not the same ones from the diner. These were government issue. Plain, intimidating. They drove her to a hotel on the highway. Not fancy, but not cheap either. A middle-tier chain where nobody asked questions. Park led her to a room on the second floor. Inside, another agent waited. A woman in her 50s with grey hair and cold eyes. "Sit," Park said. Clara sat in the chair they pointed to. The woman spread photographs across the bed. Crime scene photos, bodies, blood-burned buildings. Matteo Rossi Park began his voice clinical. "Head of the Rossi crime family operating in 6 states. We've been tracking him for 8 years. He tapped one of the photos, a warehouse burned to the ground. Arson insurance fraud. Another photo. A man's body in an alley. Marcus Duca testified against Rossi's lieutenant. Found dead 3 days before trial. More photos, more bodies, more destruction, racketeering, murder, witness, tampering, drug trafficking." Park's eyes locked on Clara. "And you lied to federal officers to protect him." Clara's throat was dry. "I didn't know." "You knew enough." The female agent spoke for the first time. Her badge read, Torres. "You saw blood on his sleeve. You saw him running. You knew he was in trouble, and you lied anyway." "I made a mistake." "Yes, you did." Park pulled out a tablet and turned it toward her. A document filled the screen. Legal language, dense and threatening obstruction of justice. False statements to federal officers. Aiding and abetting a fugitive. He scrolled down. Minimum sentence, 5 years federal prison. Maximum 20 in. The room tilted. Clara gripped the chair arms, but Park continued, his voice softening, calculated. "We're not interested in you. We're interested in him." Torres sat on the bed's edge. "Matteo Rossi is smart." "Careful. We've never gotten close enough to make charges stick. But now he's made a mistake." "You," Park said. Clara's mind raced. "I haven't seen him since the diner. I don't know where he is. He'll come back." Park's certainty was absolute. Men like Rossi. They don't make grand gestures without follow-through. He claimed you publicly. That means he'll check on you. Make sure you're okay. It's how he maintains loyalty. "So what do you want from me?" Park pulled a small device from his pocket. A wire. Professional grade. Nearly invisible. "We want you to wear this when he comes back, and he will you talk to him. Ask questions. Get him comfortable." Park leaned forward. "We need him on record discussing his operations. One conversation. That's all we need. And if I say no, then we arrest you right now. Process you tonight. You'll be in county jail by morning." Torres's voice was flat. "Matter of fact, and that medical debt your mother left you, $47,000. The creditors will sue. They'll garnish your wages for the next 20 years, assuming you can find work with a federal conviction on your record." Clara felt tears burning behind her eyes. "You're blackmailing me. We're offering you a deal." Park's voice hardened. "Help us put away a murderer, and we make all your problems disappear. The obstruction charge gone. Your mother's medical debt. We have contacts at the hospital. It vanishes. You can do that. We can do a lot of things, Miss Evans. The question is, are you smart enough to take the offer?" Clara looked at the photos spread across the bed. The bodies, the destruction. Had Matteo really done all this? She thought of his trembling hands, the sadness in his eyes, The way he'd called her protection, a consequence, not a gift. How long do I have to decide? You don't. Park stood. He's probably already looking for you. We need you wired and ready. Tonight, Clara's chest felt tight. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, but she also couldn't go to prison. Couldn't spend the next 20 years paying off her dead mother's bills. She was trapped. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do it." Park nodded to Torres, who pulled out the wire a tiny microphone that would tape to Clara's ribs, hidden under her shirt. "One more thing," Park said, as Torres helped Clara into the bathroom to apply the device. "Don't try to warn him. Don't try to run. We'll have agents watching the diner 24/7. If you tip him off, the deal's gone, and you're in custody." 20 minutes later, Clara stood in the hotel bathroom staring at her reflection. The wire was invisible under her waitress uniform, but she could feel it, a cold pressure against her skin. She was a spy now, an informant, a traitor. The door opened. Park handed her a phone. "He'll call or show up within 48 hours. When he does, you know what to do." They drove her back to her car in silence. As Clara climbed into her Honda Park, leaned down to her window. "You're doing the right thing, Miss Evans. Matteo Rossi is a monster. Remember that." The SUV drove away, leaving Clara alone in the dark parking lot. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You okay?" "Haven't seen you at the diner." Clara's hands shook as she typed back. "I'm fine. Just taking some time off." The response came immediately. "I'll stop by tomorrow. 200 a.m., like old times." Clara stared at the message. Tomorrow night, she would betray the man who tried to protect her. She sat in her car and cried. Matteo showed up at exactly 200 a.m., just like he'd promised. Clara was wiping down the same counter she'd been cleaning the night they met. The diner was empty. Pete had fired her, but she still had keys and old habits died hard. Plus, she had nowhere else to go. The wire pressed cold against her ribs. "You look tired," Matteo said, sliding onto the same stool as before. Clara poured his coffee without asking. "Black. Haven't been sleeping well. Because of me." It wasn't a question. Clara didn't answer. She couldn't. Not with the FBI listening to every word. Matteo sipped his coffee, watching her carefully. "You're shaking." Clara's hand trembled as she set down the pot. "Just cold? It's 70 degrees." She met his eyes, and for a terrifying moment, she thought he knew that he could see right through her shirt to the microphone taped to her skin. "What do you want from me?" Clara asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "Nothing." Matteo's answer was simple. "Honest, I came to check on you. Make sure you're okay." "I'm not okay. I lost my job, my apartment. My best friend won't talk to me. The whole town thinks I'm a criminal." The words poured out before she could stop them. "So no, I'm not okay." Matteo was quiet for a long moment. "Then I can give you money enough to start over somewhere else." "I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" "I want to know why." Clara leaned against the counter. "Why were you running that night?" "Who were you running from?" Matteo's jaw tightened. He looked away out the window at the darkness. Clara thought he wouldn't answer. Then softly, "My brother Antonio." His voice cracked almost imperceptibly. "He was killed before you met. Rival family, they shot him outside his own house. Matteo's hands curled into fists. He was 26 years old. Never hurt anyone in his life. He had the wrong last name. Clara's heart clenched. I'm sorry. I was driving to identify his body when the FBI tried to pull me over. Old warrants, racketeering charges that won't stick. He looked back at her. I couldn't stop. I couldn't let them lock me up while my brother was lying in a morgue, so I ran. The wire felt like acid against Clara's skin. Why are you telling me this? She whispered. Because you asked. Matteo's smile was sad. And because you're the only person in 10 years who's looked at me like I'm human. He came back the next night. And the night after that, Clara told herself she was just doing her job, wearing the wire, asking questions, gathering evidence like Agent Park wanted. But that was a lie. The truth was, she looked forward to 200 a.m., to the sound of his car in the parking lot, to the quiet conversations over black coffee while the world slept. On the fourth night, Matteo talked about his father's funeral, how the FBI had photographed everyone in attendance, turning grief into surveillance. On the fifth night, he told her about Vincenzo, his second-in-command, who'd been pushing him to retaliate for Antonio's death. He wants war, but war just creates more bodies, more brothers who don't come home. Then why don't you stop? Clara asked. Walk away from all of it. Because the only way out of this life is in a coffin. Matteo's eyes were hollow. I built an empire to protect my family, and I couldn't even protect the one person who mattered. Clara reached across the counter without thinking. Her hand covered his. Matteo stared at their joined hands, like he couldn't quite believe it was real. You're allowed to grieve, Clara said softly. Not in my world. In my world, grief is weakness. Weakness gets you killed. Then your world is broken. Something shifted in Matteo's expression. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. You lied for me, he said quietly. That first night, the FBI, they could have thrown you in prison, ruined your life, but you lied anyway. His eyes searched hers. Why? Clara thought about the wire, about Agent Park, listening to this conversation about the deal she'd made. She should have lied again, should have said something the FBI could use. Instead, she told the truth, because I saw someone who was tired, someone running from something bigger than themselves. She squeezed his hand. I know what that feels like. Matteo was quiet for a long moment. Then cops lie for money. Men like me lie to survive. But you lied for nothing. No reason except it felt right. Is that bad? No. His thumb traced circles on her palm. It's worse than dangerous. You're good, Clara. Actually good. And good people don't last long around people like me. After he left that night, Clara stood in the bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. Then she reached under her shirt and ripped the wire off. The tape pulled at her skin, leaving red marks. She didn't care. She threw the device in the trash and walked out. In the main diner, something caught her eye. A small black box under booth 5, no bigger than a quarter. Clara's blood ran cold. She got on her hands and knees and pulled it free. Another bug, but not the wire she'd been wearing. This was something the FBI had planted themselves. How many were there? She found 2 more. One behind the napkin dispenser, another under the cash register. They bugged the entire diner. Clara's hands shook with rage. She crushed one under her heel, then stopped. If she destroyed them all, the FBI would know. They'd arrest her. But if she left them, Clara pocketed one of the bugs and left the others. A compromise. A small act of rebellion. She was locking up when Jenna's car screeched into the parking lot. "We need to talk." Jenna stormed out, holding something in her fist. "I came to apologize and found this under your counter." She opened her hand. "Another FBI bug." "Jenna, they're using you." Jenna's voice cracked. "The FBI is using you to trap him. And you're so far gone you can't even see it. It's not like that. Isn't it?" Jenna stepped closer. "You think he cares about you? He's a criminal. Clara, a murderer. And you're making excuses for him because he says pretty words and looks sad. You don't understand." "You're right. I don't understand." Jenna's eyes filled with tears. "The Clara I knew would never protect a monster. But that's not who you are anymore, is it? You're not saving him, Clara. You're becoming him." "That's not fair, isn't it?" Jenna threw the bug on the ground. "Choose right now. Him or the rest of your life." Clara looked at her best friend. The only person who'd stood by her through her mother's death, through the debt, through everything. "I can't," Clara whispered. Jenna's face crumpled. "Then we're done." She got in her car and drove away. Clara stood alone in the parking lot, the FBI bug at her feet, and realized she'd just lost the last piece of her old life. And she still didn't know which side she was on. Clara didn't see Vincenzo coming. She was closing up the diner midnight, not 200 a.m., because Matteo had texted saying he couldn't make it tonight when she heard the kitchen door open. "We're closed," she called out, not looking up from counting the register. "I know." The voice was smooth, accented Italian, like Matteo's, but colder. Clara turned. A man stood in the kitchen doorway, tall, maybe 50, with silver hair slipped back and a suit that probably cost more than her car. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You're Vincent," Clara said. Matteo had mentioned him. The second in command, the one who wanted war. Smart girl. He walked into the dining area, slowly, hands in his pockets. "Matteo talks about you. Says you're special, different from the usual trash he associates with." Clara's hand moved toward her phone. "Does he know you're here now?" "And he won't." Vincenzo pulled something from his pocket. The FBI bug. The one Clara had removed from under the counter and thought she destroyed. Her blood turned to ice. "Found this in the garbage out back," Vincenzo said, casually. "Hidden under coffee grounds. Someone tried to hide it, real good." He turned it over in his fingers. "You know what this is, Clara. I found it. I was going to tell Matteo." "Liar." The word was soft, deadly. "I've been watching you for 2 weeks. Watch the FBI take you from the Walmart parking lot. Watch them bring you back 3 hours later." He stepped closer. "You're working for them. You're the rat." "No, don't insult me." Vincenzo's smile vanished. "Matteo's gone soft over you. Won't see what's right in front of his face. But I see it. You're FBI, and you're going to get us all killed." Clara backed toward the counter. "I'm not. Matteo will tell you." Matteo's judgment is compromised. He sees a pretty face with a sad story and forgets everything his father taught him. Vincenzo pulled a gun from his jacket, but I haven't forgotten. Rats die. That's the rule. Clara's hand found the phone in her apron pocket. Nothing personal, Vincenzo said, raising the weapon. Just business. Clara hit Matteo's number and dove behind the counter as the first shot exploded overhead. The phone rang once, twice, another shot. Glass shattered. The coffee pot behind her exploded. "Please," Clara sobbed into the phone. "Please pick up Clara. He's trying to kill me." The words came out in a rush. "Vincenzo. He found a bug. He thinks I'm FBI. Where are you, the diner? I'm 10 minutes away. Hide. Don't hang up." Clara crawled toward the kitchen. Phone clutched to her ear. She could hear Vincenzo reloading his footsteps, slow and deliberate. "You're just making this harder," Vincenzo called out. "I'll make it quick, professional. They'll think the FBI did it. Retaliation for you not giving them what they wanted." Clara made it to the kitchen and pressed herself against the walk-in freezer. Her whole body shook. "I'm not FBI," she whispered into the phone. I know Matteo's voice was tight controlled, but she could hear the car engine roaring. "Just stay alive for 8 more minutes. He's going to the kitchen door, slammed open." Vincenzo stood, silhouetted against the dining room lights. "Found you." He raised the gun. A shot rang out, but it wasn't from Vincenzo's weapon. Vincenzo stumbled, blood blooming on his shoulder. He spun around. Matteo stood in the back entrance, his own gun still raised. He must have broken every speed limit between here and wherever he'd been. "Drop it," Matteo said quietly. Vincenzo's face twisted with rage. "She's FBI. I found the bug. I said, drop it." For a moment, Clara thought Vincenzo would shoot anyway. Then slowly he lowered his weapon. Matteo kicked it away, then turned to Clara. "You okay?" She couldn't speak, just nodded. "Get up." Clara stood on shaking legs. Matteo's eyes swept over her, checking for injuries, then settled on Vincenzo. "Explain." Vincenzo pressed his hand to his bleeding shoulder. "She's working for them. The FBI took her 2 weeks ago. I saw it, and I found their bug in the garbage. I know about the FBI," Matteo said. Vincenzo froze. What Matteo's gun never wavered. "I've known since the second night she wore the wire." "Do you think I couldn't tell?" The way she kept angling away from me when we talked. The questions that sounded like they came from a script. Clara's heart stopped. "You knew." "Of course I knew." Matteo's eyes found hers. Sad. Understanding. "The FBI wanted you to spy on me. Didn't they threaten you with prison if you didn't?" Clara's throat burned. She couldn't lie anymore. "Yes, and you agreed. I was scared. I didn't know what else to do." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "But I stopped wearing it weeks ago. I couldn't do it anymore." "Why?" "Because you trusted me," Clara whispered. "And no one's done that in a long time." Vincenzo laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You see, she admits it. She's FBI." "She's not FBI." Matteo's voice cut like a blade. "If she was, I'd already be in custody. She had dozens of conversations with me, enough to put me away for life. But she destroyed the wire instead." He stepped closer to Clara, and she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Vulnerability. "The FBI lies for convictions. My people lied to survive. But you," his voice softened, "you lied for nothing. No money, no power, just because it felt right." "I'm sorry," Clara choked out. "I should have told you." "No, I'm sorry." Matteo lowered his gun. I should have protected you better. Should have known they'd come after you. This is insane. Vincenzo clutched to shoulder. You're choosing her over the family. I'm choosing to not become my father. Matteo's jaw tightened. He killed anyone who looked at him wrong. Saw betrayal everywhere. It made him powerful, and it made him die alone. He turned back to Vincenzo. Get out. Get that shoulder looked at. And if you ever come near her again, I won't miss next time. Vincenzo stared at him in disbelief. Then his face twisted into something ugly. You're weak, he spat. Your father would be ashamed. He stumbled out the back door, leaving a trail of blood. Clara and Matteo stood in the wreckage of the kitchen. Bullet holes in the walls, shattered glass, everywhere the smell of gunpowder in the air. You really knew? Clara asked. This whole time? Yes. Then why did you keep coming back? Matteo holstered his gun and looked at her. Really looked at her. Because trust is a luxury I can't afford. Clara, my whole life everyone wants something. Money, protection, power. His voice dropped. But you make me want to try to trust someone even when it's dangerous. Clara's heart hammered. What happens now? Now Matteo's smile was sad. Now we both try to survive. What's coming? What's coming? Before he could answer, his phone rang. He checked it, and his expression darkened. I have to go. Family business. He started toward the door, then paused. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone. I'll have someone watch the place. Then he was gone. Clara stood alone in the destroyed kitchen, her ears still ringing from the gunshots. She didn't know that 2 miles away, Vincenzo was making a phone call. Agent Park, we need to talk. I have information about Matteo Rossi. His voice was ice. And I want full immunity. Clara was trying to sweep up the broken glass when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. It's a trap. 3:00 a.m. tonight. Don't be at the diner. M. Her hands froze on the broom handle. A second text. I mean it. Clara. Get out of town now. She stared at the messages, her mind racing. If Matteo was warning her, that meant he knew something was coming. Something bad. She should run, pack her car, and drive until she hit a state where nobody knew her name. But Clara Evans had spent her whole life running from things, medical bills, debt collectors, her mother's slow death. Every time she ran, she lost a piece of herself. Not this time, she texted back. Where will you be? The response came immediately. Somewhere you're not. Don't be a hero, Clara. Heroes get buried. Clara looked around the diner. The bullet holes in the walls, the shattered windows she'd boarded up with plywood. This place had become a war zone, but it was also the only thing she had left. She made her decision. At 2:45 a.m., Clara was behind a counter when headlights flooded the parking lot. Not cars, vans. 6 of them, black and unmarked, taking positions around the block. Men emerged wearing FBI jackets, tactical gear rifles. Agent Park's voice crackled over a megaphone. Clara Evans, we know you're inside. This is the FBI. Come out with your hands up. Clara's heart pounded. She stayed low behind the counter. Her phone buzzed. Get out, now. Clara texted back. I'm staying. Why? Because I'm tired of running. At 2:55 a.m., a single black car pulled into the parking lot. Matteo stepped out, hands visible, no weapon drawn. He looked directly at the FBI vans, then at the diner. Clara stood up so he could see her through the window. Matteo's expression went from surprise to anger. He shook his head, a clear message. "What the hell are you doing?" Clara unlocked the front door. Matteo walked toward it slowly, like a man walking to his execution. When he stepped inside, Clara locked it behind him. "You should have run," he said quietly. "So should you." "I can't. This has been Vincenzo's play. He made a deal with the FBI. My location for immunity." Matteo's jaw was tight. "If I don't show, they'll think I'm weak, that I'm running. And then every family from here to New York will smell blood. So this is a trap for me." "Yes, for you." He grabbed her shoulders. "Clara, you need to leave right now. Go out the back before the back door exploded inward." Vincenzo stormed in with 4 men. Not FBI, not Matteo's people. Hired guns. Mercenaries. Surprised, Vincenzo's shoulder was bandaged, his face twisted with rage. "You shot me. Chose this waitress over your own family. So now I'm choosing the FBI over you." Matteo pushed Clara behind him. "This is between us, Vincenzo. Let her walk out." "No." Vincenzo raised his gun. "She sees me. She knows I'm the rat. She dies with you." Outside, Agent Park's voice boomed. "Matteo Rossi. You're surrounded. Come out with your hands up." Matteo didn't move. "You think the FBI will protect you? They'll use you and throw you away. Better than dying for you." Then the world exploded. The front window shattered as FBI flashbangs crashed through. Smoke filled the diner. Clara couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Gunfire erupted from 3 directions. Vincenzo's men fired at Matteo. The FBI fired at everyone, and then more men poured through the kitchen entrance. Matteo's loyalists, at least 6 of them, returning fire at Vincenzo's crew. Clara hit the ground as bullets tore through the air above her head. The neon sign outside exploded in a shower of sparks. The coffee machine burst, spraying scalding liquid across the counter. Clara Matteo dove over the counter, covering her body with his stay down. "This is insane." "I know." He fired twice over the counter. Clara couldn't see who at "I told you to leave." "I made my choice." Another explosion. A flashbang near the kitchen. One of Enzo's men went down screaming. Through the smoke, Clara saw Agent Park and his team trying to push through the front door, but they were caught in the crossfire between Matteo's people and Vincenzo's mercenaries. "FBI, ceasefire!" Park's voice was drowned out by the chaos. This wasn't an arrest. This was a massacre. Clara's hand found something under the counter, the old baseball bat Pete kept for robberies. Her fingers closed around it. A shape loomed through the smoke. One of Enzo's men, gun raised, looking for targets. Clara didn't think. She swung. The bat connected with his knee. The man screamed and went down. His gun skittered across the floor. Clara grabbed it. Clara, no. Matteo tried to stop her, but she was already moving. She fired a shot into the ceiling. Not at anyone, just a warning. Everyone stop. Nobody stopped. But Clara's shot hit a water pipe. It burst, raining down on the diner, mixing with the smoke to create chaos. Through the confusion, Vincenzo appeared. Gun aimed at Matteo's head. "This ends now." Clara fired. "Not to kill." She aimed for his leg. The shot went wide, hitting Vincenzo's gun hand instead. He dropped the weapon with a scream. Matteo moved like lightning. He tackled Vincenzo and they crashed through the already shattered front window onto the parking lot. The FBI swarmed immediately, pulling them apart. But in the chaos, something went wrong. Vincenzo, bleeding and desperate, grabbed a fallen FBI agent's gun. He swung it toward Matteo. Matteo was faster. The shot echoed across the parking lot. Vincenzo's body hit the pavement. No. Agent Park ran forward, but it was too late. Vincenzo was dead. His star witness. His immunity deal gone. Matteo stood there, gun still raised as FBI agents surrounded him. But he was looking at the diner at Clara, standing in the doorway, soaking wet, holding a gun she never wanted to fire. Their eyes met across the chaos. "Run," Matteo mouthed, but there was nowhere to run. FBI agents rushed the diner. Someone tackled Clara from behind. Her face hit the wet floor. Handcuffs bit into her wrists. "Clara Evans, you're under arrest." She was dragged outside into the red and blue lights. Ambulances, news cameras, the entire highway blocked. Agent Park stood over her, his face purple with rage. "You just killed our case. You think he cares about you, You think this meant anything to him?" Clara looked past Park to where Matteo was being shoved into an FBI van, hand scuffed behind his back. He was staring at her, and then he smiled. Small, surreal. The van doors slammed shut. Clara closed her eyes as they pushed her into a separate vehicle. It was over. The FBI holding cells smelled like disinfectant and fear. Clara sat on the metal bench, still in her wet clothes from the diner, hands trembling from adrenaline. They'd separated her from Matteo immediately. Different vehicles, different processing rooms, different fates. She'd been here for 6 hours. No lawyer, no phone call. Just Agent Park's face every hour appearing at the small window in the door to stare at her with pure contempt. At hour 7, the door finally opened. Park entered with Agent Torres and a thick file folder. Clara Evans. Park's voice was ice. Obstruction of justice, aiding and abetting. Assault with a deadly weapon on a federal operation. Witness tampering. He dropped the folder on the table. "You're looking at 25 years minimum." Clara's throat was too dry to speak. "But that's not even the best part," Park continued, leaning forward. "Vincenzo Duca, our star witness, is dead. Our entire case against the Rossi family just collapsed. 3 years of surveillance, wiretaps, undercover work gone because of you. I didn't ask for any of this. You lied for a mobster. You removed a federal wire. You fired a weapon during an FBI operation." Park slammed his hand on the table. "You chose him, a murderer, over your own country." Torres spoke for the first time, her voice cold. "Where is he?" Clara blinked. "What Matteo Rossi? Where is he?" "You arrested him. I saw you put him in the van." "The van never made it to federal lockup." Park's jaw clenched. Somehow the transport was ambushed 2 miles from the scene. 4 agents injured. Matteo Rossi gone, vanished. Clara's heart stuttered. He'd escaped. "So I'll ask you one more time," Torres said. "Where is he? I don't know." Park studied her face. "You really don't, do you?" He laughed bitterly. "You think he cared? You think this meant anything to him?" He pulled out crime scene photos. The destroyed diner. Vincenzo's body. The blood-stained parking lot. He used you, created a distraction, played you like everyone else, and disappeared. That's what men like Rossi do. Clara stared at the photos and said nothing. Park gathered his files. You'll be transferred to county jail in the morning. Arraignment in 72 hours. I hope he was worth it. They left her alone. Clara put her head in her hands, feeling the weight of every choice she'd made crashing down. She'd lost everything. Her diner, her freedom, her life. For what? She stood and shoved her hands in her pockets and froze. Something was there. Something that hadn't been there before. Clara pulled it out slowly. The serpent ring gold and heavy and impossible. Her breath caught. How she'd been searched. Strip-searched. How is this in her pocket? With shaking fingers, she examined it more closely. The serpent's mouth. It moved. A tiny hinge she'd never noticed before. She opened it. Inside, wrapped around a hollow core, was a piece of paper no bigger than a fortune cookie slip. Clara unfolded it with trembling hands. The handwriting was neat, precise. You didn't save me from them. You saved me from myself. Live the life I can't. Clara read it 3 times, tears blurring her vision. Then she heard footsteps. She quickly hid the ring and note in her shoe just as the door opened again. But it wasn't Agent Park. It was Jenna. 10 minutes, the guard said, leaving them alone in the small visiting room. Clara and Jenna sat across from each other, a scratched plastic barrier between them. Jenna spoke first. You look like hell. Thanks. I saw it on the news. The shootout. They said you fired a weapon at federal agents. I didn't. I shot at the ceiling. I was trying to stop. Clara's voice broke. It doesn't matter. No one believes me anyway. Jenna was quiet for a moment. Then I believe you. Clara looked up, surprised. I was wrong, Jenna said softly. What I said before about you becoming him, I was scared. Scared of losing you to something I didn't understand. She pressed her palm against the barrier. But you didn't become him. You stayed you even when it was impossible. I'm going to prison, Jenna. Maybe. Maybe not. Jenna glanced at the door, then leaned closer. My cousin's a defense attorney. A good one. She's already filed motions, says the FBI entrapped you, coerced you into working for them. She thinks she can get the charges reduced, maybe even dismissed. I can't afford. It's already paid for. Clara froze. What someone anonymous covered the retainer. $20,000 in cash. Jenna's eyes were knowing. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Clara's hand went to her shoe, where the ring pressed against her foot. No, she whispered. I don't know anything. Jenna smiled sadly. Liar. You always were a terrible liar. She stood. The attorney's name is Sarah Kim. She'll be here tomorrow. Listen to her. Clara let her help you. Jenna. I'm sorry for everything I said for leaving when you needed me. Jenna's voice cracked. You did the right thing even when it was wrong, even when it cost you everything. The guard appeared. Time's up. Jenna touched the barrier one last time, then left. Clara sat alone in the visiting room, her hand pressed against the place where Jenna's had been. That night, lying on the cell's thin mattress, Clara pulled out the note again. You didn't save me from them. You saved me for myself. She thought about Matteo's trembling hands that first night, his grief over his brother. The way he looked at her when he said trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. She hadn't saved him from the FBI or his enemies. She'd saved him from becoming the monster everyone expected him to be. and maybe, just maybe, he'd saved her too. Saved her from a life of running, of being invisible, of believing she didn't matter. Clara folded the note carefully and tucked it back in the ring's secret compartment. Then she slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Outside her cell in the dark hallway, a guard walked past without looking. He didn't notice that the security camera had been looped, showing empty hallways for exactly 10 minutes at 3:00 a.m. The same time, a lawyer would mysteriously have all the evidence she needed to destroy the FBI's case. The same time, 20,000 in cash would appear in a defense fund. The same time, Agent Park would discover that every piece of surveillance from the diner had been corrupted, unusable in court. Matteo Rossi was gone, but his protection remained, and Clara Evans, for the first time in her life, wasn't afraid. 6 months later, the charges were dropped on a Tuesday afternoon. Sarah Kim Jenner's cousin had torn the FBI's case apart piece by piece. Coercion, entrapment, illegal surveillance. The judge had looked at Agent Park with undisguised contempt and dismissed everything. Clara walked out of the courthouse into autumn sunshine, a free woman. But freedom felt different than she'd imagined. She had no job, no apartment, no purpose. The diner stood empty on Highway 41, still boarded up from the shootout. The insurance company had finally paid out, but Clara couldn't afford to reopen it. The building went up for sale. Clara watched from her car as a young couple toured the property. They had dreams in their eyes, plans a future. She drove away before they could see her crying. She got a job at a truck stop 30 meters away. Night shift like before. Different diner, different faces. Same coffee. Nobody knew her there. Nobody asked about the scars on her wrists from the handcuffs or why she sometimes flinched when headlights filled the parking lot. She was invisible again. Safe, empty. Jenna visited once a week, trying to pull Clara back into life. There's a community college nearby. You could take classes, get a degree, start over. But Clara didn't want to start over. She just wanted to exist quietly until the ache in her chest faded. "Have you heard from him?" Jenna asked one night. Clara always said no. It was the truth. Matteo Rossi had vanished completely. No news reports, no sightings. The FBI had declared him a fugitive, but the investigation had gone cold. It was like he never existed at all, except for the ring Clara wore on a chain around her neck, hidden under her shirt. 3 weeks before Christmas, Clara got a call from a lawyer she never met. "Miss Evans, I'm handling the sale of your property on Highway 41. The buyers have closed, and they'd like to meet you." Why? They didn't say, but they were very insistent. Clara drove out to the diner on a Saturday morning. The boards were gone from the windows. Fresh paint gleamed on the walls. The bullet holes had been patched. The couple who toured it months ago stood in the parking lot, smiling. "Miss Evans." The woman rushed forward. "We're so glad you came. We wanted to thank you personally. Thank me for selling to us. We know we weren't the highest bidders. But what do you mean?" Clara's confusion must have shown. "I didn't choose the buyers. I wasn't even told there were multiple offers." The couple exchanged glances. The husband cleared his throat. "The trust that handled the sale. They said you'd specifically wanted it to go to a local family, that you cared about keeping the community alive." "What trust?" He checked his phone. "The Serpent Foundation. They managed the whole transaction." Clara's heart stopped. The woman continued, oblivious. "They even left something for you. Said it was yours. It's inside." Clara walked into the diner on numbum legs. It looked different. New booths, modern lighting, but the bones were the same. The counter where she'd serve Matteo his first cup of coffee. The spot where she'd lied to the FBI. And sitting on that counter, gleaming and impossible, was a commercial espresso machine. Top of the line, the kind that cost $15,000. A note was taped to it. Clara's hands shook as she pulled it free. The handwriting was familiar. Precise, you chose your mother's memory over me. That's why you'll always be better than people like us. Next time, don't lie for anyone, not even me. But I still take my coffee black. Clara pressed the note to her chest, tears streaming down her face. He was gone. Really gone. This was goodbye. But it was also a gift. The diner sold to good people. Her debts mysteriously paid. A future she could build without looking over her shoulder. Matteo Rossi had given her the one thing: he could never have freedom. That night, Clara stood outside the diner as the new owners finished setting up. The neon sign repaired and bright flickered to life. Clara's diner open all night. She smiled through her tears. It wasn't hers anymore, but it would live on. Miss Evans. Clara turned. The young woman from the couple held out a cup of coffee. We made it on the new machine. Thought you should have the first cup. Clara took it. Black, no sugar. Perfect. She was raising it to her lips when she heard it. The low rumble of engines, her head snapped up down the highway. Headlights appeared. One pair, then another, then another. A convoy of black SUVs moving in perfect formation. Clara's breath caught. They didn't stop, didn't slow, just it drove past the diner in a steady stream. 20 on 30. 40 vehicles. A reminder, a promise. I'm still out there, and you're still protected. The last SUV passed, and Clara could have sworn just for a second. She saw a silhouette in the back window, a hand raised a final goodbye. Then they were gone, disappearing into the darkness toward Chicago. Clara stood in the parking lot, coffee in hand. As the rumble of engines faded, she pulled the serpent ring from under her shirt and looked at it in the neon light. Then slowly she unclasped the chain. She didn't put the ring on. Instead, she walked back into the diner and placed it in a small shadow box the new owners had hung behind the counter, a piece of the diner's history. "What's that?" the husband asked. "A reminder," Clara said softly, "that sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones we expect." She finished her coffee and set the empty cup on the counter. "Thank you for the coffee and for keeping this place alive." Clara walked out into the night, leaving the ring behind. She didn't need it anymore. She climbed into her car and looked at the diner one last time, the lights warm and welcoming, the neon sign bright against the dark sky. Somewhere out there, Matteo Rossi was living the life he'd chosen, and Clara Evans was finally living hers. She started her car and drove away. Not toward the past, but toward whatever came next. The neon sign flickered behind her, a beacon in the darkness. Open all night for travelers, for the lost, for anyone who needed a light in the dark. Just like it had been for a suited stranger on a desperate night 6 months ago. Clara smiled and kept driving.